everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Fair Edge's Experience Dialogues on Reimagining Stakeholder Experiences. My name is Nishant, and I will be the moderator for today's episode. The narrative around us is changing. It has a more progressive tone on how the business ecosystem is coming together, but we still have much more to achieve in each of our episodes. We will focus on dialogues that will be centered on what it takes for organizations to elevate experience for all key stakeholders so that everyone can thrive. Joining us today is renowned business leader, Mr. Bharat Walkhu, founder and president of the Walkhu Advisory, who has championed stakeholder engagement through his career. In conversation with Mr. Bharat will be our host, Mr. Anurag Mohit, CEO of Fair Edge, to dialogue on the topic, Building Intentional Organizations, a Conscious Force for Good. This session will be for 45 minutes. As you will find your lines muted, we are going to continually mind the chat conversation. So keep asking your questions, and towards the end of the session, we will try to address as many as possible. Before I pass on the stage to our host Anurag, let's watch a short video of Mr. Bharat Walkhu for an inspiring start.
Today's companies have got to balance the needs and expectations and aspirations of all stakeholders, because the luxury of focusing on only shareholders or investors is gone. We're living in an era, we're living in a digital age where everybody figures out what companies are doing, and if they find out that a company is not focusing on the other stakeholders with as much zeal and as much commitment as on the owners or the consumers or the shareholders, they are likely to be penalized in a variety of ways. You create a quality of life that is better for everybody, all stakeholders. Hi there.
Thank you, and thanks, Nishant, and welcome everybody, and welcome Mr. Bharat Walkhu. I think so, team. We are extremely excited, as Nishant said, to kick off our experience dialogue series, which we are just kicking off today. And we plan to run this over the years now. So this is just the start of it. And we plan to bring experts like Bharat Walkhu to actually come and share their experiences as what they are doing in their areas of expertise to change the experiences of people wherever they are. So, and today is a great day to start with Mr. Bharat Walkhu. We are going to talk about in terms of reimagine stakeholder experiences, which is very close to Fair Edge heart, and also very, very close to Mr. Bharat Walkhu. I think all of you saw the video, and that video was made many, many years back, and he talked about in terms of the importance of stakeholder experiences. So, and he's, I think some of you have already must have done some research or read through a number of books he has written. He's an exemplary leader who have made huge impact in the past. He continues to amaze me in terms of the impact he continues to do today. I'm sure with his spirit and motivation, he will make huge impact in years to come. So God bless you, Mr. Walkhu, because I think we need leaders like you to continue to make impact to the society.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anurag. Appreciate those kind words.
Yeah, and today we'll be talking about how to build intentional organizations, which I think with his work in Tata Sons and Tata organizations, he has played an extremely critical role. And Tata is a great foundation in terms of how they have approached this. We're going to touch in terms of what it takes to make an intentional organization. What are the balancing a leader has to do in the journey, because it's not easy to build one. So you have to balance it out, and what challenges a leader faces. On behalf of Fair Edge and all the participants who have joined today and taken out their important time to listen to us, I welcome again all of you, including Mr. Walkhu. We at Fair Edge and many people who couldn't join today are actually looking forward to listen and to the recording and gain from our experiences. Bharat, any comment you want to make before we start into the question and answers? Yeah.
So first of all, thank you very much, Anurag, Sukanya, Purnima, and the entire Fair Edge team for having me at the first of your reimagining experiences dialogue. The fact is that, as you very rightly said, this is very close to my heart. I genuinely believe that businesses have got to make a leap from where they are today to a newer orbit, the future orbit. And it is organizations like Fair Edge that can actually facilitate leaders to make the transition. So it's very, very heartwarming to be with all of you here today. And I look forward to a very enlightening and a scintillating conversation with you, Anurag. So thank you for having me. Deeply appreciative of that.
Thank you. Thank you. So what we have done, Bharat, because it took us to prepare well, because we had to curate some questions and do some research in terms of how to make best use of your time and of the people who will be joining today. So my first question, and we have series of questions we will be asking. My first question to you is a subject you just touched in terms of how to build intentional organization. The video said that, I think this video, I'm sure would be 10 years back, sometimes recorded.
Yeah.
So what led to you and the others whom you have worked, what led you people to think in this direction at that time, which is almost a decade back? In my role as a CEO, which I've been here for last 18 months or 2 years, I've been meeting many CXOs and CEOs, and maybe around 200 plus I have done. But I have not seen this as a very critical top of their list. So are they missing any trick? And also I see sometimes a gap between what they say and do. So what would be your advice in terms of such leaders? Yeah.
Okay,
And such
so
organizations.
you asked a number of questions together. So let me go step by step. First and foremost, there is this very profound saying that your vibe determines your tribe. Now, I grew up in Kashmir, which, as you know, is very, very well endowed with mountains, glaciers, freshwater lakes, rivers, beautiful forests, and so on. But I was, having grown up there, I knew how valuable these natural resources are for the well-being of not just people, but all of life itself. And I was just entering my teens when in 1972, the United Nations had its first Human Environment Conference in Stockholm, Sweden. And I was very, very deeply impacted by what the deliberations were. So this is 72. And fast forward to the time I graduated from college, and I realized that if there is any organization in India that truly is committed to a holistic and a sustainable development approach, it is the House of Tata. And so by 1992, of course, in 86, 87, I joined the Tata Administrative Service, and I was very, very happy to join the Tata Group. Now, when I said your vibe attracts your tribe, it's because I was naturally inclined towards these things. So I found the Tatas and they took me in. And the interesting thing is that by 2009-10, the government of India was also realizing that India did not have a common framework which would guide organizations towards a more balanced approach to business. People talking about profit, people, and planet, but that was still very, very fuzzy, very, it wasn't very, very specific. So I was again very fortunate that the Ministry of Corporate Affairs made me the chair of the multi-stakeholder group to draft the national guidelines on the responsible business conduct, a document which today is playing a very, very key role. And right from the time we started working on this, it became very apparent that if we had to enter the future in a way that we are not just focusing on ethics, But intergenerational ethics and sustainability, we had to look at all stakeholders, all stakeholder experiences, their dignity, as your little film showed a short while ago, and make sure that every single stakeholder is not only cared for, is treated right, and is given what you may call the right approach to enabling them to live their lives with freedom, joy, happiness, pursuing their vocations and so on. So really, it's been a set of multiple factors. And the other question that you said, that today I'm still not seeing this as a very key element or a point on the agenda of companies. Well, the fact is it isn't yet. It's many of the progressive, forward-looking companies are pursuing this, but many more companies need to pay attention to it, because they are not only losing a trick, as you said, they are losing the ability to be viable and around for the long term. And I'm saying this with all the confidence at my command. Companies that do not pay attention to fair stakeholder experiences, which don't care about the dignity of all stakeholders, which don't care about planet Earth and the impact that they're having on it, will not be around the way the more progressive and pioneering companies will be.
Thank you, Bharat. I think this is very enriching, and I'm sure everybody on the call has taken some. So we'll just have a quick poll. So everybody has a chance to actually answer here. Thanks everyone for participating in the poll. We'll come back and have more polls during the session. Thank you. So my next question, and I think this is linked to the question we had on poll. What do you think is the role of CEOs in championing the stakeholder experiences? Because we have seen in our work life that if you have a very dynamic CEOs, they can make huge transformation and guide the organization in a different way. At the same time, Bharat, and maybe I'm asking another question here, please pardon me for that, because its question is related. We have seen in our research and discussion in the industry that many startups or small size organization or medium size organization, they say that, look, we have many other battles to fight right now for my survival. So this stakeholder experiences and other things can wait for another day. Do you see basically they are missing something? And do you have any guidance for them, for such both for the CEOs as well as the CEOs of startups and the mid-sized company actually who are just laying the foundation? Yeah.
You know, there is a very, very nice little argument that Milton Friedman made in the 1970s. And I'm going back a little. I'm an amateur historian, so I like to go back and connect these things with what was said in the past. And he said, companies are they are persons by law. A company is treated as a person, a entity which can enter into contracts, which can enter into arrangements with other parties, but it is a person without responsibilities. This is what Milton Friedman said, which takes me to this very important point that you raised, Anurag, that if it is not the so-called corporate entity that is responsible, who is?
Obviously, it is the promoters and the CEO, the upper management of the enterprise. And if the Tata Group today is the way it is only because Jamshedji Nasarwanji Tata, the founder, and G.R.D. Tata, the second or third chairman of the group and the longest serving chairman, whose birthday we celebrated yesterday, they set the ground rules and the values which enabled everybody in the enterprise to pursue an approach which was way, way above what was the norm at that time. So I cannot overemphasize the importance, Anurag, of the role of upper leadership, upper management, of promoters. In the case of startups, even the promoters of startups. It's now when a startup leader tells you, hey, Anurag, I've got my hands full with funding. I've got my problems with designing the actual value proposition. I'm fine. I don't have time to look for a CTO and so on and so forth. I'm just giving examples. It's like saying, hey, I'm going to plant a nettle in the ground and expect a harvest of rice and wheat later on. It doesn't happen. A startup has to be founded on the right principles from day zero. And if any founder tells you that, oh, I've got my hands full and my only focus is going to be how to survive, I'm afraid that startup is bound to fail. I'm saying this with all the responsibility at my command. These startups which don't think long term, which don't think in terms of multi-stakeholder concerns, are doomed to fail. And this is the way it's going to be for all time to come going forward. And if anyone tells you otherwise, they need to get themselves examined, because that's not going to happen, frankly. So I really think that, Anurag, we're at a very, very important inflection point in the history of enterprise. The so-called Western/imperial model of East India Company or the Dutch East Indies companies and so on, trying to exploit and monopolize territories and so on. The scramble for Africa, which Otto von Bismarck initiated in the 1880s and so on. All that is gone. That cannot happen anymore. And we have to be we're living now in the age of compassionate leadership, in the age of leadership that truly, truly gives dignity to all stakeholders and responds to their deeper aspirations, even as we create surpluses which the investors and the shareholders might want. It is a balancing game, but it has to be done. And that's exactly why the best and the brightest alone can make it to the top of such compassionate organizations.
Very well said. I think, and I think this video would be seen and listened by many startup CEOs, because I think that because many of them are struggling actually to take that direction which we spoke. So just continuing our discussion, I have another question which actually came to me during my research, and this was related to many challenges where the leaders, CXOs face today. COVID happened, and then the competition is happening from unexpected quarters because somebody who was not designing they were not in the industry which you were competing, and suddenly they become a competitor for you. So in terms of, it is pushing all the leaders to a different limit. Such situations are pushing sometimes these leaders to take short-term views or short-term steps without looking at the long-term part of it. And maybe because this short-term gains keeps them maybe bringing the money from the investors, and possibly in terms of keeping them the stocks floating the way it should be. So what would be your advice, and when these leaders look at from a short-term versus the long-term perspective, because there is a danger if the decisions actually may go wrong?
Here is something that we all need to keep in mind. When a CEO tells you that he or she is under pressure to perform, where is the pressure coming from? It's coming from expectations of investors or shareholders. Now, if the investors themselves are aware of the fact that there are certain principles of responsible investment or investing, then the pressure is automatically diminished. And there is a thing called PRI. I'm sure you're aware of it, the Principles of Responsible Investing or Investment, which was signed sometime in 2006 by about 3,500 signatories around the world, organizations, investor organizations, and so on. But it was floated in 2006 as a means precisely to diminish the short-term pressure on organizations and enable them to focus on the long term. So my point is that if companies feel that they are under undue pressure to perform from quarter to quarter, they must have a serious conversation with their investors and pull out the PRI, the principles of responsible investing, and throw them on the table and say, hey guys, this is what we follow. You better take a look at this as well. Because don't forget that, I mentioned the 1972 Human Environment Conference, the first of its kind in Stockholm. A few years before that, there was a book which many of you may not have been born then. It was called The Limits of Growth by Donella Meadows and Dennis Meadows and a few other authors. But it was supported by a think tank called the Club of Rome. Now, this book said that there is a limit to which Earth can sustain, the exploitation of natural resources. And investors read it, and of course they said, no, this is not okay. This won't happen. But we're seeing it happening now. So we need to resurrect the ideas that were contained in that book, and of course temper it for current development, technology, and so on. But sustainable development and treating planet Earth as a stakeholder are critical to the success of future enterprises. And therefore, when CEOs tell you, oh, Anurag, I don't have the time for all this, tell them to have a heart-to-heart chat with their investors and reduce the pressure and focus on the long term. There is no other way.
Thank you. Absolutely, no. And very well said. Related to that, maybe this time for a quick poll that will break some monotonous here. Thank you, everyone, for participating in this poll. Good to see, actually, some people believe that the organizations are looking after many stakeholders. So good to see that. So my next question is, let me just close this window, is on values. And you have written book on values, which I think if people have not read, they should find time to read, especially in this environment. It's extremely important. Every day we get to see in the newspaper or in the media that some company has done this way, some company has done that way, and it comes as a surprise to all of us that many reputed companies actually at times are compromising values. Then the challenge what happens is that many times if large organizations do that and reputed organizations do that, the mid-sized companies, the small startups, actually, because they have different types of pressures, for them also it becomes very difficult to actually build the foundation values. So, from your experiences, why is value so important? Was in the past and even today is if you don't build your organization values, what will the consequences an organization will see?
Okay, so this is a very, very important question, Anurag, and it's again something which I wholeheartedly believe in. Values are utterly, utterly important, very, very important. So, if we have food to nourish our bodies and our minds, what do we have to nourish our spirit? The answer is our values nourish our spirit. And if a leader truly wants to be a leader, a genuine leader who is capable, effective, admired by all, loved by all, and who takes his or her company to higher levels of performance and appropriate engagement with all stakeholders, that person has to live and breathe the right kinds of values. Because without your spirit being nurtured, you cannot be an outstanding leader. This is something I agree wholeheartedly with, and I have seen it in my own experience. And that's one of the reasons why I, as a coach and a consultant today, focus so much on leadership, because leadership has impact. Great leaders have great, good impact. Horrible leaders have negative impact. And we've seen that in so many quarters, we see it on a regular basis. The second reason why values are important is because if we don't ourselves regulate our own lives and the lives of our organizations, then what will politicians do? They will bring in more regulation. In fact, today, July 30, is the 22nd anniversary of the day when the Sarbanes-Oxley Act was passed by the US government, by the US Congress, today as we speak. And why was that done? Because Enron failed, WorldCom failed, Parmalat failed, and what did the Congress say? Oh, bring more regulation. But that's not the answer. Do you think there were fewer scams in America after that? No. We just saw that Fried take his company of Bitcoin FTX down to the tube. So if you aren't smart and wise and you don't live by values, you will be giving an invitation to politicians to overregulate. And that is not good for enterprises. I'm of the view that a light amount of regulation is important, but self-regulation by far-sighted visionary leaders like Jamshedji Tata and G.R.D. Tata, that is the need of the hour. Otherwise, you will have Sarbanes-Oxley, you will have some other Indian regulation, and companies will feel stifled and nothing will change. Instead, rise above using values to determine your actions, and that itself will be a huge, huge change, which will make a difference in the long term.
Thank you. Oh, I think very, very important. And I've seen you do a lot of work on culture. And this may be my last or second last question, depending on the time we have. Values and culture go hand in hand. Is that right?
Corporate culture, absolutely. The House of Tata is a living example, and there are many, many other organizations around the world where the leadership values, when percolated across the organization, help to frame and forge the corporate culture, which then supports the right kind of decisions, the right kind of behaviors by other leaders, and it even determines who are the people who rise in the hierarchy. Because values and cultures are like Siamese twins connected at the hip.
Yeah, and what we at FairEdge has done, Bharat, is that we say that values leads to culture, and culture actually leads to basically experiences. So reimagine, because culture, many of the things which you define actually helps in terms of what experiences you provide across the organization or in the society.
Absolutely. In fact, this brings me back to the starting question that you started off with, Anurag. How do we create an intentional organization? Don't forget that an intentional organization is one that is pursuing with great clarity and great focus certain values related to all its stakeholders. It is purpose driven. It is a learning organization. it has complete intent about what it wants to achieve vis-a-vis what stakeholder. So for instance, if we want to be a company that will leave planet Earth better than when we extract resources from it, that is an intention, and that can be made into processes, systems, and decision systems in the organization. So
Great.
absolutely, I completely agree with you, and I wish you well in Fair Edge.
Thank you. So maybe this is the last question. There are a lot of youngsters maybe on this session, and maybe listen to do our video also later. What would be your advice of in whose hands future of India is there? So because they are the future, so what are the few things, especially building intentional organization, what are the few things, pointers you would like to bring and tell them that do not compromise on them. You can make sure that those becomes your DNA.
So I think what's important is that when we talk about the future of India or the future of the world, let's not forget that each one of us has a very, very important role to play. And we should never, ever say that, oh, this is in the hands of parliamentarians or this leader, that leader. No, each one of us is a leader in our own right, in our own sphere of influence. We can make a difference, and we should. So that's point number one. Point number two, the things to be kept in mind that these problems of managing systems are usually quite complex. They require collaboration. They require a scientific approach. They require data science, like Fair Edge brings to the set of problems. And it requires a deep conviction that all earthlings, all businesses have got to work towards what I called a life-affirming future, a life-affirming set of businesses, a life-affirming set of organizations, where everybody is supporting life because we're all part of the interconnected web of life itself. So we have to collaborate, we have to use a scientific approach, and we, above all, have to know that we can play a role. We should not sit passively. We have to be proactive, do whatever we can in our own spheres of influence. And to my mind, that is the guidance I would like to leave for the younger leaders who are listening to this.
Thank you. And I'm sure, I think the people who are on the call and who listen to us later will enjoy. And with that comes we can come to the end of the question and answer sessions. What we will do, Bharat, is that we have collected few questions before we came to the session, and some people are already putting. So we'll take 3-4 questions and try and
absolutely
part of our answer. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Anurag, and thank you, Bharat, especially for your captivating insights and the apt analogy of your vibe attracts your tribe, reminding us of the importance of building genuine connections with our stakeholders, right? So what we'd like to do now is invite all our participants and guests to engage with our speaker. Please feel free to post your questions in the chat box. We will select a few to be answered by Anurag and Bharat. We already had a few questions sent to us by some of the guests pre-event. So Anurag, you could start with those first, and while we mind the chat.
Thanks, Nishant. So Bharat, here is the first question, and this is related to the board. So companies want to focus only what board has as their agenda. So the question is that, what do you think, and you have experience on being on board. So what do you think that, especially related to all stakeholder experiences, when this will become lively in terms of most and more organization and boards, it becomes a topic for discussion, where everybody benefits. Yeah.
Okay, so Anurag, this is like the proverbial chicken and the egg question. Who sets the board agenda? The MD, the CEO. The MD and the CEO, if they believe that that is the right way forward, they must put it on the board agenda and get all the board members to support this. So to say that, oh, we will only do this if the board will think about it, but hello, the board will think about it if you make them think about it. That's what I said by being proactive. Today, businesses have got to think for the future. And my request to all of you who are in on boards and who are also executive directors, MDs, and so on, please put these points on the board agenda going forward, and you will see the difference. The board members will say, "Aapne ye kyun nahi report kiya iske bare mein?" They'll ask you. Okay, but you have to do it. Okay, Anurag, if it's okay, I see a very, very interesting question from Mr. Kalai Selvan Palani.
Yeah.
And if I have your permission, may I take that up first?
Yeah.
Because he's asked a question that if we listen to all the stakeholders, will the business or an enterprise be really keen to hear what they're saying? Because there'll be some noise, there'll be some genuine points, there'll be some not so genuine points. But Mr. Palani, I think what is important is the process is not a one-time thing. Listening to stakeholders, just as you listen to the voice of the shareholders and the voice of the investors on a regular basis, in the same way, listening to the voices of stakeholders through a process of stakeholder engagement is a continuous iterative process. Now, I fully understand that many of these expectations or aspirations are going to be in conflict. Let's say customers want you to give products that are of a high quality at the lowest price, whereas a vendor would like you to make sure that you give them the best price for their input, raw materials, or whatever. So there is conflict. But that's exactly the role that you have to play. You got to be creative. You got to be able to reconcile these so-called adversarial expectations and come out with the most optimal result that your business can wholeheartedly pursue. So it's important that you don't take the easy way out. You have to use your creativity, your wisdom, and make sure that all the stakeholder expectations are balanced. And if there's a tie, even the means to break the tie have to be clearly established in your enterprise. So it's a long-term thing. It's not a one-off thing. And gradually, when you do it iteratively, Mr. Palani, you will see that the noise level will diminish and the real signals will be heard by you and will be shared by the stakeholders.
I'm sure Selvan would have listened to it, and I'm sure he's going to benefit from what you said. One of the questions which I got was really related to in terms of upcoming leaders who face challenges about decision making, and especially in this environment where so much of data and other things comes into play. So the question is that should the decision making more guided by fact based or should be intuition based? So what do you think? What should be the foundation of decision making?
My short answer is that decision making is always done using facts and data. But I also realize that as human beings, we don't always have the luxury of having all the data with us. So there will be an element of intuitive understanding, or what you may call a heuristic understanding of the whole thing. So we have to be both systems 2 thinking predominantly, but sometimes system 1 thinking also may be required. And the system 1, system 2 is what Daniel Kahneman refers to in thinking fast and slow. So I think it's really a bit of mostly systems 2 or database thinking, but sometimes we may have to also do systems 1 thinking, but at no point in time must we get into analysis paralysis, which means asking for so much data that we suddenly freeze and can't take a decision. That is never a good situation.
So we'll take a last question, and this question is in terms of Bharat, you do a lot of work on leaders, and I'm sure in terms of you advise many organization on terms of leadership assessment, basically those pieces. So what are top 3-4 traits you feel is extremely important for leaders to build so that they can manage what's happening in the organization as well on the society? You are I've seen in all my discussion, you talk about the importance of environment, the importance of in terms of society. Many times, I think, especially young people are not able to visualize and see those aspects of it. So a few lines from you that would be helpful for people. Yeah.
Okay, so first and foremost, Anurag, the first competence or capability that every leader in the world must have, it is the ability to think strategically. Think strategically, not plan. You can't plan strategically if you can't think strategically. So strategic thinking is the first step. The second thing is you have to be able to communicate clearly and assertively. And I would like to specifically say a word to the women leaders in the audience. Women leaders have got to learn to say no, and say no without feeling guilty, without feeling pressured. Because I have seen many outstanding women leaders saying yes to the point where they get stressed out. So that's the second thing. So this is true for both men and women, but for women, it is even more applicable. The ability to say no or to be assertive in situations. And the third thing is to work collaboratively and not through your ego trying to, have turf wars. The future of enterprises will be greatly heightened if you can work around your differences and collaborate with everybody, not just inside the organization, but with stakeholders even outside. And that, Anurag, will determine the quality of leadership that is going to be required for the future. So these three things, and of course, there are many more competencies, but I think this is important. And of course, make sure that you develop your subordinates, because that is a critical leadership requirement. If you don't plan for the future isn't there as far as you're concerned. We don't want a situation where people don't know who will replace you in the next 5 to 7 years.
Thank you, Bharat. Nishant, over to you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Bharat. Thank you, Anurag, for really taking this time out of your busy schedules and coming and giving us this insightful conversation with us today. I would just like to go back to saying that reimagining stakeholder experience is a journey, and we've just taken the first step together right now. So we hope this session has sparked new ideas and ignited a passion for building more intentional organizations amongst the entire audience today, and to the rest of the public who's going to be watching this on video later. So thank you all, everybody, for joining us today. We hope you found this session valuable. Stay tuned for the next episode that we would be having in our Experience Dialogue series that would take place on the 22nd of August. We will shortly be sharing information regarding that, and you can register for that as well. And we can't wait to see you there. Thank you, everybody, so much.
Thank you. But Nishant, before you wrap up, can I just add one more suggestion?
Yeah.
My suggestion is, if there are any audience questions that have remained unanswered, send them to me. I'll be delighted to respond to them offline and send them to you as an email.
Absolutely. We will just share your email address in the group chat as well, so people know where they can email you.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Anurag. Delighted to have had the chance.
Thanks for coming in, Bharat. I really enjoyed the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nishant. Thank you, Sukanya. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Anurag. Bye-bye.